floor.
Thank you, sir. I've been given the honor of introducing Dr. Bashar Jaafari, Ambassador of Syria to the United Nations. I have had the honor of working with Dr. Jaafari for many years on various occasions and for various causes, and it's now an honor to introduce him. Dr. Jaafari really doesn't need that much introduction. Most of us are very familiar with his fiery speeches and powerful comments at the United Nations and especially at the Security Council in defense of the rights of the Syrian people, its sovereignty, the country's sovereignty and national determination and independence. Dr. Jaafari has been very critical in exposing the hypocrisy of the US government in its claim of supporting democracy, human rights, and international law. Syria has been under attack since 2011, at least. And with the help of US mercenaries, the Islamic State, terrorists, and few other US mercenary forces, Syria has been suffering from a lot of mass killings by these people, by these criminals. And now it is being occupied, some parts of its territory, by the United States and its allies, by Israeli government, and recently by Turkey. So the question of the struggle for maintaining and safeguarding the integrity, territorial integrity of Syria, protecting its independence and sovereignty is an issue for all of us. I am honored to introduce to you Dr. Bashar Jaafari.
Thank you so much, dear friend, Dr. Bahman, for inviting me to participate at this very noble and lofty webinar. I'm very glad to see these lovely faces of friends that I haven't seen for a while, but I have you all in my heart. Dear colleagues, allow me to thank you for holding this important meeting and for dedicating this time to us. It's a weekend, and despite the circumstances we all live in due to the outbreak of this unexpected virus. Although, as you know, we are suffering from too many viruses. Some of them are human, some of them are not. We deeply appreciate the initiative of the US Peace Council to launch the petition of the open letter to stop economic sanctions and all other initiatives that aim to work for collective actions to oppose regime change efforts in targeted countries through military intervention and sanctions imposition. You have said it, it's about 39 countries out of 193 countries, which is the total number of member states at the United Nations, meaning that almost 1/5 of the humanity are suffering from sanctions. This is too much. We are all facing an extraordinary circumstance and going through a critical time in which our world trying to deal and contain the spread of COVID-19, which requires real synergy of the efforts of all governments without exception, and unification of international, regional, and national measures for prevention and treatment. However, the countries which suffer from the severe negative impact of the unilateral coercive economic measures deal with additional pressure and challenges of a different type in the face of this pandemic. In addition to that, the sustained negative effects of these illegal measures on the welfare of citizens, their daily lives, and their ability to enjoy basic health and education services. The current crisis situation linked to the spread of this dangerous virus poses new and unprecedented challenges to the Syrian government, foremost of which are the following. First, providing basic infrastructure and necessary ingredients for the health sectors in order to provide prevention, checks, and treatment for all without exception. Second, providing basic medical, nutritional, and service materials to everyone without exception. Third, empowering the Syrian economy in a way that gives the government and the public and private sectors the ability to support and finance the necessary plans and procedures to ensure the containment of the spread of this virus, especially in fields of sterilization, isolation, and closing public and private places and facilities. Unilateral coercive measures directly affect the ability of the main economic sectors in Syria to perform their tasks effectively, especially in the fields of energy, banking, health, industry, transportation, communications, internal and external trade, adjust the local currency rate, and combating high prices of all basic materials and services, etc., etc. I would like to point out here that these punitive and unlawful measures, and allow me to underline these two very important words, unlawful, punitive and unlawful measures, because according to the UN Charter, what is called sanctions are unlawful and illegal and illegitimate. The UN does not recognize any regime of sanctions. The only legitimate sanctions recognized by the UN member states are the ones imposed by the Security Council, only the Security Council. And none of these 39 countries suffering from European and economic sanctions, none of them has been, none of them has suffered sanctions endorsed by the Security Council. So all these sanctions are illegitimate, punitive, and unlawful. I reiterate, I would like to point out here that these punitive and unlawful measures continue to cause a weakening of the ability of the public and private medical sector in Syria to import medicines and medical materials due to the tight targeting of these unilateral coercive measures to the Syrian banking sector, especially in the field of foreign bank transfer. Moreover, many companies specialized in the medical and pharmaceutical industries refrain from dealing or contracting with the public and private sectors in Syria, fearing that they would be targeted with financial, banking, and commercial sanctions imposed by the US government or any third party that it considered had violated the US economic blockade imposed on the Syrian Arab Republic. The US government imposes a wide series of coercive unilateral economic measures on the Syrian Arab Republic. And in reference to the recent fact sheets and press releases regarding exemptions, exceptions, and authorizations for humanitarian assistance and trade from the US Office of Foreign Assets Control, known as OFAC. These so-called exemptions granted by the US Treasury Department were and are still subject to politicized considerations that lead to the delivery of this aid to areas that are controlled by terrorist armed groups, which in turn take over this aid and prevent it from reaching its true beneficiaries, with the aim of supporting the position of these terrorist groups, prolonging the war and obstructing the prospects for a final and comprehensive settlement. This paragraph is very important, as you see, because it explains to everybody that these State Department claims that the American administration does not impose or does not prevent the exportation of humanitarian assistance to Syria is wrong. It is not correct. The American administration allows only sending so-called humanitarian assistance with weaponry, of course, and mercenaries and money coming from the Gulf states, only to the terrorist groups in the northwest and northeast of Syria. Moreover, the Central Bank of Syria was also unable to take advantage of the Syrian funds frozen abroad. Our own funds, by the way, Syrian funds, they are frozen abroad with the aim of financing the materials that are related to the basic needs of the Syrian people. As the international or foreign banks did not respond to the payment orders issued by the central bank, and the Syrian parties did not get any response to the communications, neither through the banking correspondence system or through diplomatic channels. We highly appreciate your dedication to the cause of lifting the unilateral sanctions imposed on the peoples of 39 countries. And we invite you to pay special attention to the conditions of Palestinian citizens under Israeli occupation and the Syrian citizens in the Syrian occupied Golan, who are deprived of their rights to sufficient medical and health care. So, as you see, we are suffering from too many types of terrorism. The latest type introduced by those who impose sanctions on 39 countries is what we call the health terrorism. They already imposed political terrorism, they already imposed economic terrorism, and now they are imposing health terrorism. Of course, we add to this financial terrorism, and educational one, and media terrorism. In conclusion, the government of Syria confirms that it has mobilized all its human, medical, and nutritional resources available to serve all Syrians, wherever they are, in the face of this global COVID-19 pandemic. Syria also highly appreciates the positions and statements made by the Secretary General of the United Nations recently, in which he called for an end to unilateral coercive measures imposed on many peoples of the world, including the Syrian people. Allow me here to open brackets to explain to you a little bit what's going on right now in the United Nations. Since the Secretary General, Mr. Guterres, announced twice on the 23rd and 27th of March, he announced twice, actually, the necessity to lift the economic sanctions imposed on the countries victims of this immoral system. Twice he did it. And since these two calls happened, we saw at the United Nations, the General Assembly precisely, to be precise, we saw several initiatives, several draft resolutions or statements submitted by dozens of member states. Of course, all of them are infiltrated by Western European countries or by the American delegation. These dozens of statements and the draft resolutions, all of them lacked any reference to the necessity of ending the economic unilateral coercive measures. Although the Secretary General was very clear in his two calls on the 23rd and 27th of March, or of April, sorry, with regard to the necessity of lifting the sanctions in order to enable those who are victims of these sanctions to confront the pandemic. The Syrian government affirms that any collective and global effort to combat and eliminate the spread of this dangerous virus cannot achieve the desired results in light of the continuing policy of imposing economic blockade by some governments. led by the United States of America, of course, on more than 2 billion people in the world. 2 billion people are suffering from economic sanctions, including China, of course, and Russia. Let me just conclude by telling you an unfortunate incident that took place today. And it shows how those who impose sanctions on the Syrian people have abandoned humanitarian considerations and have become prisoners of political obsession by punishing those who don't go along with their policies. Today, Saturday, the European Union decided to reject the request of the Syrian government to send aircraft to return the Syrian expatriates in some European Union countries who wish to return to Syria in light of this global pandemic. The reason is the unilateral sanctions policy imposed also on the Syrian people, on the Syrian air transport sector. Needless to say that the Europeans will not provide an alternative solution, and those Syrians may remain stuck there, unable to return to their country. So where is the humanitarian concerns of this phony West? Thank you so much.